There was a small hand on my cheek when I opened my eyes. The room smelled like clean linen and sweet flowers. My chest felt too light. It felt as if my ribs belonged to someone else. Above me, a girl no older than 2 years watched me with silver eyes. I had never seen those pale silver eyes before. Then the girl called me Daddy. For a long moment, my mind refused the word. My name was Leyon Cosmo. Before anything else, I was the sword that killed dragons. I had walked into their skies and cut them down. Kings prayed for me. Mothers named their sons after me. I never imagined a toddler pressing her palm to my face. She used that word as if she owned it. Behind her, another girl stood a little farther back. She had the same silver hair and silver eyes. The girl did not smile. She stared at me, the way a swordsman studies a stranger. She was deciding whether or not to draw her weapon. There were 2 of them. They were twins. My throat closed tightly. I tried to sit up, but my arms trembled like a young boy. Somewhere beyond the door, I heard boots move on stone. I heard the voice of a woman give an order without any hurry. Then, I remembered the curse. I remembered exactly how it went wrong. Let me take you back to the moment before that room. I will start before those small silver eyes and the word Daddy. Let me start with the dungeon and the chains. I will start with the woman who had beaten me. My master used to tell me about families bound by blood. He said a family was the one thing you could not steal. He said it the way other men said prayers. My master raised me from a foundling and patched my wounds. He put a training sword in my hand before I could study books. He drilled me until I was more weapon than boy. He and his wife were the only parents I ever had. When they let me go, they said I would one day understand. I laughed and rode off to war. For 15 years, the Empire pointed me at dragons and I obeyed. I fought the Red Clan, the Crimson Clan, and the Electric Clan. I never lost a duel or a hunt. The songs about me became embarrassing. I stopped going to taverns that sang those songs. I told myself the songs would be my epitaph. I thought that would be enough for me. Then I met Rossweis. She was the Silver Dragon Queen. Rossweis was older than every empire on our maps. She was cold-eyed, quiet-voiced, and incredibly strong. The reports had not prepared me for her power. She caught my blade on her palm and closed her hand. The steel snapped instantly. My last vision before the dungeon was of her. She lifted me by the collar. She told my captain to remember what a leash looked like. I woke in a stone cell with my wrists chained. My armor was gone, leaving only the shirt beneath. I had no sword, no relics, and no potions. A small ring of iron burned cold against my wrists. A torch flickered as if it were bored of me. Rossweis came alone. I decided that was her mistake. The blood curse was old and forbidden magic. My master made me copy the runes when I was a boy. He wanted me to know how to burn them out of others. This was in case a witch cast one on my platoon. He never taught me how to cast the spell itself. He warned me it was a coward spell. The magic ate the caster along with the target. Only a man out of options should remember it existed. Chained in her dungeon, I was out of options. I bit the inside of my cheek to draw blood. My tongue traced the shape of the runes against my teeth. Rossweis stepped close enough to hear me speak. I whispered the words to twist our lives into a single thread. The spell was supposed to snap that thread clean. The magic caught. I felt the magic catch. Silver light rose off my skin and reached for her. For a heartbeat, I was proud of myself. Dying to take her with me sounded better than dying alone. Then, the magic met her scales and stopped. Something in the shape of the spell bent. The silver light warmed. The air in the cell changed color and temperature. The chains at my wrists went slack. It was as if the iron had lost interest in me. Rossweis stared down at me. Her cold eyes were suddenly not cold at all. She later told me the fight had reached her. The curse was meant to kill us both. Instead, it found an opening and poured into it. A coward's suicide became a knot tying 2 bodies together. The knot pulled tight. I will not describe what happened after that. It is enough to say I lost that night. I lost worse than in any duel of my life. When she was finished, my mind cracked, and the world went black. I thought that would be the end of it. It was not the end. There were 2 years of nothing. My body lay in a bed while my old kingdom mourned. They named a monument after a corpse they never found. The Silver Clan raised 2 silver-haired girls. They were born from that one broken curse. The promise of my master about family became a joke. In the dark of my coma, I could not laugh. That is how I opened my eyes to a palm on my cheek. That is how I heard the word daddy for the first time. I did not know I had made a child. The older twin spoke before I could answer the younger one. She said her name was Noah. She said the other girl was named Mune. Noah said their mother told them not to touch me. Mune had touched me anyway because she was little. She did not listen to the instructions. Noah said all of this like a scout giving a report. I understood that Noah was used to being the older one. This was true even though they had shared a womb. The face of Mune crumpled. She was ready to cry over the scolding from her sister. Something moved in my chest that I could not name. I raised my shaking hand. I put it on the small head of Mune. I told her quietly that she had done nothing wrong. Her whole face changed. A friend once called that look sun through clouds. My daughter beamed at me. She pressed her cheek into my palm. She had been waiting her whole short life for that touch. My other daughter watched but did not come closer. Boots stopped outside the door. The door opened without a knock. Rossweis had grown her hair longer over the 2 years. She wore a house robe the color of pale ash. She wore no crown and no jewelry. Last time, she had been armored to the teeth. Seeing her in the softness of her home was worse. I could plan against armor. Rossweis dismissed the girls with a single word. Mune tried to argue. The sister of Moon steered her out gently. Noah understood the command before Moon did. The door closed behind them. Rossweis and I looked at each other. She told me what had happened. She did not soften the story or apologize. I had been asleep for 2 years. Twin daughters were born in the first year. The Empire had already declared me killed in action. Rossweis had thought carefully about what to do with me. She had decided to keep me. I told her I would leave when my legs worked. She smiled without any warmth. She said she had expected that answer. She had already prepared for my reaction. She took a brand from a small silver box. It was not made of iron or fire. It was a ring of light the size of a coin. The brand hummed with the magic from the dungeon. She said it was a dragon mark. She said it was traditional for mates in her clan. She said the marks responded to feeling. Mine would sit on my chest over my heart. Hers would sit on her back where I could not reach. I told her I had not agreed to this. She said that was the point. I tried to fight her without a weapon. My body had not moved in 2 years. It was not a real fight. It was only theater. She pinned me with one hand. She set the mark against my chest. The ring of light sank into my skin. It stayed there like an old scar. Heat spread down through my ribs. The heat stopped somewhere behind my breastbone. My body understood that a piece of it was claimed. Rossweis stepped back and looked at her work. For a second, she looked almost tired. Then the cold slid back into her face. She said the halls were open to me. She said the servants would be polite. If I tried to walk out, the mark would alert her. She would know before my second step landed. Rossweis left me with the door open. I lay there staring at the ceiling and laughed. I did not laugh because it was funny. If I did not laugh, the new life would crush me. I was a legendary dragon slayer. Now I was bedridden, branded, and married to my enemy. There was one thing she had not counted on. She thought she had a broken man. My body was thin from 2 years of stillness. My reflexes were slow and my magic was quiet. She saw a prisoner she could dress in fine clothes. She did not see the mind under the ruined body. I remembered the alchemy my master taught me. I knew shortcuts using a stove and common herbs. The instinct for a blade lived under my skin. She thought she had a house pet. She had actually invited a loaded weapon into her home. I decided to take my revenge slowly. I would humiliate her as she had humiliated me. I would leave when I chose and on my terms. Then, a small voice at the door said Daddy again. Mune had slipped away from her sister. She stood in the doorway with her hands hidden. She asked if I would eat with them tonight. The plan I had made lost its edge. I told her yes. She flew across the room and climbed onto the bed. She burrowed under my arm like she always had. Her hair smelled like the flowers from earlier. Her small fingers wound into my collar and held on. I felt a new feeling aim itself at me. It refused to let go. Noah appeared in the doorway a moment later. She did not come closer to the bed. She watched me hold her sister. Her face gave nothing away. I understood that she was the daughter of her mother. She had been told about me. She was already deciding what she thought of me. My job was to make sure her answer was right. Dinner was quiet. Rossweis sat at the head of the table. She ate as if I were a tolerated guest. Moon sat on my left and held my sleeve. Noah sat on my right and asked questions. She asked where I had trained. She asked what my master had taught me. She asked if I had fought a silver dragon before. These were careful and testing questions. I answered lightly and skipped the frightening parts. I did not tell her how many I had killed. I did not tell her my nickname in the records. She asked me if I had ever lost. I told her I lost once. I pointed with my chin toward her mother. The spoon held by Rossweis paused for a breath. Then she went back to eating. Moon giggled, but Noah did not. After the plates were cleared, a nurse came. Moon had to be pried off my arm. Noah left with a small, formal nod. It was as if we had concluded an interview. When they were gone, Rossweis stood up. She walked around the table. She dropped a folded set of clothes in front of me. She promised me that the halls were open. She said I was welcome to try. She warned me that the mark would sing to her when I stepped past the gate. Then she left me alone at the table. The food went cold in front of me. The mark over my heart remained warm. I waited 3 days. During those 3 days, I learned the shape of the castle. I studied the shift changes of the guards. I relearned how to walk without shaking. Every morning Moon found me and I kept smiling at her. I told her honestly that I was glad to see her. I also answered questions from Noah. I watched Noah file the answers behind her eyes. On the 4th night, I slipped down through the servants' passage. I found the drainage tunnel that fed the outer moat. The stones were slick and cold. My body was still weak, but my mind mapped the way. Halfway down the tunnel, I felt the mark grow warm. She knew I was there. I kept going regardless. If the mark was going to warn her, running would only shorten the argument. I reached the outflow and hauled myself onto the bank. I moved into a stand of wet reeds. I laughed under my breath because she made it look easy on purpose. I was not clear of her yet. She was waiting for me in the trees on the ridge. Her arms were folded and her hair was unbound. She wore a traveling cloak for a pleasant evening walk. She did not scold me. Instead, she said she expected me to try and escape tonight. She said she had a game she wanted to play. Before I could ask any questions, she picked me up by the belt. She lifted me like a bag of grain. Rossweis unfurled the size and shape she had been hiding. I have fought silver dragons before. Their true form is not something you get used to. Their wings are the width of a city gate. Their scales are like polished coins. A single tail is long enough to level a barn. Rossweis unfolded herself into her real self. She tucked me against her chest like cargo. Then she lifted off the ridge quickly. I could not work my aching arms free. We flew for hours over stars and black country. I smelled the scent of pine. She dropped me gently but without ceremony. We were in a wood outside a small human town. We were on the far edge of the border. By the time my feet found ground, she was human again. She hovered above the trees and smiled at me. She had her hands on her hips. She told me that I had wanted to go home. She said she had saved me the walk. She promised to be waiting when I decided to come back. Then she took to the air and left me. I stood in the loam while the mark grew warm. Her wings faded into the dark. I was in human territory for the first time in over 2 years. I was hungry and thin. My legs were unreliable. The people of that town would know my face. Every child in the empire had been shown my portrait. If I walked in and said my name, I would be a hero. Feasts would be held for my return. Messengers would ride for the capital. However, the mark over my heart was humming softly. It would tell my dragon wife exactly where to find me. I hitched my hood higher and started walking. Trouble found me before the town did. Halfway along the road, I heard voices in the pines. These were the low and disciplined voices of men. They sounded like a squad who hunted for a living. 6 of them stepped onto the road in front of me. Their weapons were already out. The leader wore a captain's sash. I recognized the sash from a border regiment. These men were dragon slayers and empire regulars. They were my old kind, but they did not know me. My hood was up and my face was thinner. My hair had grown out during my 2 years of coma. To them, I was a beggar on the wrong road. They were happy to find someone to strip for coins. The captain told me to hand over my belongings. He ordered me to step aside. I did neither and let them close the ring around me. I did not want 6 dead soldiers on my hands. I put my palms up. I told them quietly that they were about to insult a silver dragon queen. The men laughed at my words. The captain asked what a beggar knew about dragons. I told him the mark on my chest belonged to her. I did not specify which queen I meant. I let their imaginations do the work. 2 of the younger soldiers lowered their weapons. The captain sneered and told me to prove it. I did not want to prove my identity. Doing so would burn my last bit of anonymity. By then, the mark on my chest was warm again. The warmth was not a mild pull from a distance. It was hotter and closer now. I understood that my dragon wife had followed me. She was in the woods behind me right now. She was watching to see what I would do. If those men attacked me, she would kill them all. I told the captain one last time to lower his sword. He lunged for my collar anyway. My weak arm caught his wrist. My knees turned and he hit the road on his back. It happened so fast his own men did not see it. I pinned him with a knee to the throat. I told his squad very calmly that I was a friend. I told them to run north for 2 miles and not stop. Something in my voice cracked through their pride. The soldiers ran away. I let the captain up from the ground. He backed away with his eyes on my hood. After a moment, he followed his men. The clearing behind me went quiet. Rossweis stepped out of the trees. She was smiling in a small and private way. I did not like that look. She said she was disappointed because she was ready to eat someone. She said she was glad I spared them. Otherwise, she would have had feathers between her teeth on the flight home. Then she looked at me properly and her face changed. My legs reached the end of their strength. The road tilted and the stars slid. My knees hit the dirt. The last thing I saw was her taking 2 long strides. She had a look of alarm on her face. I did not have time to enjoy the look before the dark closed. I woke to the same ceiling. For a second, I thought the escape was a dream. Then the mark on my chest gave a small, warm pulse. My legs ached from the road. The smell of flowers on the pillow told me the truth. Rossweis had carried me back. She put me in the same bed she had branded me in. In her way, she had made a point. A small weight pressed against my ribs. Moon was curled against my side. One small hand was fisted in my shirt. She was afraid the bed would tilt and drop me. Her cheeks were sticky because she had been crying. Somewhere in the house, a clock ticked. Outside the window, the sky was a pale gray. Morning had not fully arrived yet. Across the room, Noah sat awake in a chair. She was not reading but was watching me. When my eyes met hers, she did not look away. She did not smile. Her hands were folded in her lap like a judge. She told me that Moon thought I was dead. The words landed harder than the road had. Noah continued talking. She said Moon had woken up and found my bed empty. She said the servants could not lie well enough. Moon had run through the halls calling for me. She called until she lost her voice. When the guards brought her back, she built a pile of my clothes. She put flowers on the pile. She did this because people do it when someone does not come home. My 2-year-old daughter had held a funeral for me. My throat closed. I turned my face into the pillow. I did not want my daughters to see my face. Moon stirred and pressed her cheek to my shoulder. She did not wake up. Her small hand tightened in my shirt. Noah watched me from her chair. Noah said one more thing before she stopped talking. She said if I left again, I should not come back. Then she stood and walked out. I lay there for a long time while Moon slept. The clock ticked. The mark on my chest was quiet. This meant Rossweis was staying away on purpose. My old plan for revenge had a hole in it. The hole was shaped like a small girl. She had put flowers on my empty clothes. When Moon woke, she looked at me. She acted as if she had been holding her breath. She asked whether I was really there. I told her that I was there. She asked if I was going to leave again. I told her no, and I meant it. That answer surprised me. I would not leave without my daughters. If I left this place, I was taking my daughters with me. That was a different and longer plan. It required me to get my body back. I got out of bed that morning and started building. First, I asked a servant for the kitchen herb cabinet. Then I asked for a burner and glass tubes. These came from the alchemy shelf. The old scholar who ran the shelf had served in a human court. His eyes narrowed when he heard my request. He recognized the list of what I wanted. He said nothing but sent the tools. By evening, I had a bench set up in the corner. I had the beginnings of a stock cabinet. My master had trained me as an alchemist before I had a sword. He said a man who only knew how to hit things would run out of answers. He said a man with a stove and common weeds could rebuild himself. That lesson had kept me alive through 15 years of hunts. It would build me back now. Rossweis noticed my work. She stood in the doorway one night with her arms folded. She watched me boil something down to a dark syrup. She did not comment on the setup. She asked if I intended to poison anyone in her house. I told her that I did not. She said she would take that as a promise. Then she left. There was a game between us now, and both of us knew it. She had branded me because she believed my body would betray my mind. She believed a dragon slayer with no dragons would eventually settle. My job was to keep her believing that while I mended myself. Her job was to enjoy watching me try. Mune helped in her own way. She sat on the floor beside my bench. She named my herbs back to me in the voices of a child. She called dried mint the green scratchy one. She called crushed silverleaf her mother's hair. She called the petals on the windowsill sleeping bread. She never asked what any of it was for. She only wanted to be near me. That was payment enough. Noah kept her distance. She did not eat at the same table for the first week. She did not answer when I greeted her. She did not come into my room. Once, we passed each other on the stairs. She stopped and looked up at me. She asked if I had been a strong swordsman. I told her that I was strong. She asked whether I was still a strong swordsman. I told her not yet, but I was working on it. She nodded once. She went up the stairs. I understood what my older daughter wanted from me. She wanted me to be someone worth respecting. She did not want a father yet. She wanted a man she could measure herself against. She had grown up as the daughter of the Silver Dragon Queen. Respect was the currency in her small heart. Love came later if it came at all. Love only came through the door of respect. I could work with that. The chance came sooner than I expected. Her tutor arrived one morning with news of the exam. Noah would sit for the entrance exam to St. Heath Academy in 6 weeks. St. Heath is the school for the young of the great dragon clans. Their scions attend it before they take their place in their courts. Every clan sends its best students. The exam is written and cruel. The interview after it is even worse. A child who fails at St. Heath is quietly written out of her clan's future. Noah was to sit for the exam at 3 years old. Dragons age differently from humans. Their bodies grow at a rate closer to ours. However, their minds are pushed hard and early. By 3, a well-raised silver dragon child was expected to be competent. She had to hold her own in a room of politicians. Often, these politicians were 20 times her age. Her tutor was competent and dry. He drilled her in Dragon Clan history. He taught the 6 branches of applied magic theory. He also taught the etiquette of the 4 courts. Noah worked in the mornings and the early afternoons and did not complain. She got the answers right most of the time. Once or twice a day she got one wrong. Her face would go very still at these moments. She would simply ask him to move on. I watched her for 3 days from the hall doorway. On the 4th day, I sat down at her table. The tutor looked up at me. He looked like a cat watching a dog on its couch. He politely stated that he did not think a human father could follow the material. Noah did not look up. She was watching to see what I would do. I asked the tutor for his current lesson book. He gave it to me like a man handing a toddler a knife. He clearly hoped to be proven right about my ignorance. I opened the book and reviewed the current page. I told Noah the answer to the question that had tripped her earlier. Then I explained why the answer was correct in 3 sentences. I used an example from a human border war. She had never heard of it because I had fought in it. Her small head came up. Her silver eyes fixed on mine. For the first time, something in her gaze was curious. The tutor cleared his throat and tried a harder question. I answered it immediately. He tried another, and I answered that too. He tried a question from a book he had not opened yet. It was about how mana behaved when crossing from the body to the air. I answered that one with 2 additional lines the textbook had left out. I had used those lines to survive a dragon fight. This fight happened 9 years before. The tutor sat back in his chair. He looked at me differently now. He gathered his notes and told Noah he would return tomorrow. After he left, Noah and I were alone at the table. She did not thank me. She was not built for that yet. She looked at the open book and then at me. She asked very quietly whether I would teach her the rest. I told her that I would. We worked every afternoon after that. She was a fast learner, and she was proud. Pride made her impatient with her own mistakes. I taught her the way my master had taught me. I asked her more questions than I answered. I did not let her move on until she explained the idea. She had to use her own words. Sometimes it took hours. Sometimes she went to bed frustrated. However, she always came back the next day. Mune sat under the table during our lessons and drew pictures. She drew me with a sword the size of a tree. She drew Rossweis with wings that filled the whole page. She always drew Noah standing next to me and holding my hand. Mune never showed those pictures to Noah. She showed them only to me and then folded them up. She put them in her desk and never spoke of it. Rossweis pretended not to notice any of it. She noticed everything in that house, of course. She was proud and decided my bond with the girls was my problem. It was not hers to bless. She would pass the study room in the evenings and glance in. She would see me leaning over Noah's shoulder to point at a diagram. Rossweis would keep walking as if she had seen nothing. However, the dragon mark had other ideas. I discovered this by accident at first. I would look up from a book as Rossweis passed the doorway. The mark on my chest would warm. It was a polite warmth, like a hand held near a coal. She would glance in and feel the corresponding warmth. This heat would bloom on her back. Her stride would falter by one step before she kept going. Only I saw it, and I filed it away. Rossweis had told me that the mark answered to desire. She had not said that the mark ran in both directions. She could not spike mine without spiking her own. If I made her want something, she felt it. If I made her feel foolish, I felt that too. That was a weapon. I put it in the cabinet next to my alchemy jars. Then I waited for the right night to use it. The right night was the first big storm. Silver Country gets storms that walk out of the sea like invasions. There is lightning on the ground and thunder that shakes the cupboards. Wind peels tiles off the roof. Rossweis had a taste for these storms. She would stand on the west balcony in her robe and watch. She would take deep breaths of the weather. Her face would soften in a way it never did. I had been brewing a potion for a week by then. My master called it lightning brandy. Alchemy books call it etheric distillate. It uses lightning-struck water and a silver salt to concentrate mana. This concentrate works in a caster's body for a short window. Drink it, and your reflexes get a season younger. Drink too much, and your heart stops. My master made me learn the exact overdose line once. I knew the taste of my own limit. I brewed it that week using the storm's electric charge. On the night the storm hit, I drank 2 measures. 1 would have been safe, but 2 put me in danger. My whole skin came alive. I walked up to the west balcony where Rossweis stood. She sensed me before I spoke, and her back stiffened. The mark on my chest was quiet. She had her feelings clamped down out of habit. I stood at her shoulder and watched the lightning. I told her she looked better in a storm than in a crown. My voice was surprisingly steady. She turned her head slowly. The mark on my chest warmed. She had not been expecting me tonight. My words had landed under her guard. I felt her surprise as a small heat behind my sternum. I let my eyes stay on hers longer than usual. I let my hand find the small of her back. She caught my wrist with her fingers. She could have broken my bones if she had chosen to. Her eyes searched mine for a trick. The potion had my heart hammering at a rate I could not fake. The mark was picking that up as desire. It was chemistry, but the mark did not know the difference. Her breath caught. Rain hit the balcony sideways. Lightning stripped the room white behind us. I stepped in against her, and she did not push me away. She let out a breath that was almost a laugh. She told me I was playing a game she had not agreed to. I told her she had branded me. Therefore, she had agreed to whatever came next. Her hand let go of my wrist. Her hand slid to my collar. I did not know if she would pull me closer. I did not know if she would throw me over. She didn't either, and stepped back. The mark on my chest cooled all at once. She smiled at me in a small and dangerous way. Calmly, she said she would enjoy paying me back. Then she walked past me into the storm-lit house. She left me on the balcony with rain on my face. My heart was in my throat. The potion grip loosened fast. My knees almost went. Round 1 had gone to me, barely. I made it back to my room and sat down. I let my hands shake for a minute. The potion drained out of me and left me hollow. My chest hurt and my mouth tasted of copper. But the mark was still faintly warm. I knew Rossweis was pretending her mark was not warm too. I laughed under my breath and lay down. Somewhere in that laugh, a piece of the plan changed. Petty revenge was a small target. I had glimpsed a bigger target on the balcony. I could reach her under all that pride. I could take her apart without ever raising a sword. The next morning, Mune climbed onto my bed. She asked if I had fought a monster in the night. My hair was still damp and my shirt was wrinkled. Small children see everything and misinterpret half of it. This is a mercy for their parents. I told her that I had fought a big one. I told her it was a draw, but I would win. She patted my cheek and said she believed in me. Noah came in behind her with a small satchel. She was ready for our morning lesson. She saw my damp hair but said nothing. She sat down at her usual place and opened her book. When I sat across from her, she pushed a page toward me. We worked and drilled while the exam clock ran. Mune drew under the table. Rossweis went about her day and pretended nothing happened. The mark on my chest sat quiet, and I was patient. Isabel arrived on a Tuesday. Isabel Melk is the queen of the Red Dragon clan. She is the older sister of Rossweis. Where Rossweis carries power like armor, Isabel wears it like jewelry. She has red hair to her waist and a traveling coat. She has a grin she uses like a lockpick. She came without warning and brought 8 trunks. She intended to stay for 1 week. Rossweis met her sister in the courtyard. She looked like a woman who had been ambushed. Isabel hugged her sister and kissed the twins. She spotted me over the shoulder of Rossweis and went still. Her eyes traveled over me from boots to hair. Her grin widened. She asked Rossweis loudly if I was the famous husband. Rossweis stated tightly that I was. The grin of Isabel became sharper. She came at me across the courtyard like a hawk. She took my hands in hers and spoke. She said she had heard much about me. She said Rossweis had not done my looks any justice. Isabel planned to enjoy her visit enormously. Behind her, the face of Rossweis changed. The mark on my chest gave a warm pulse. I looked past Isabel and met the eyes of Rossweis. I let a small smile touch my mouth. Her face went perfectly and dangerously still. Isabel made herself at home within an hour. She took the guest suite and left the doors open. She toured the halls in a dressing gown. She kissed the cheeks of servants who did not want it. By dinner, she had rearranged the seating. She sat between Rossweis and me. Rossweis endured this with the face of a general. She looked like she was watching her supplies get looted. She remained silent as the meal began. Mune adored her aunt immediately. Noah was more careful about everything. Even Noah warmed a fraction during dinner. Isabel asked Noah which branch of applied magic she liked best. Isabel listened as if the fate of a border war depended on it. Isabel turned to me during dessert. She mentioned that she had a hobby. Rossweis paused with her spoon in midair. Isabel explained that she collected small compromising situations like others collect coins. She said she had been bored for 10 years. Isabel was glad her sister had finally married. This opened a whole new market for her hobby. She winked and asked me to pass the sugar. I passed the sugar to her. The mark on my chest felt warm throughout the meal. The warmth indicated the inner feelings of Rossweis. On the outside, she remained a cold queen. Underneath the surface, she was already preparing herself. Isabel set her first trap the next morning. She waited for Rossweis to be in council with her ministers. Then Isabel sweetly asked me to help carry a crate. I recognized the trap immediately. However, I went anyway because refusing would look suspicious. I was also curious about her plan. She led me down the servants' stairs. We reached a low room filled with old furniture and wine. She pointed to a small chest in the corner. I bent down to lift the chest. She stepped behind me and shut the heavy door. I heard the bolt slide into place on the outside. Her cheerful voice came through the wood. She said she would return in 1 hour. She told me to enjoy myself in the meantime. I straightened up and dusted my hands. Then I turned around to face the room. Rossweis was already standing there. She had been shoved through a second door just before mine closed. She wore her house robe with her hair unpinned. Her expression showed she had already analyzed the situation. She was calculating if murder was a fair response. The mark on my chest flared with warmth. I could tell the mark on her back felt even warmer. This was the trick designed by Isabel. The cellar had 2 doors but only 1 bolt. Isabel timed the counsel of her sister to end early. 2 mates were now alone in a locked room. Their matching brands responded to their feelings. Isabel had built a small pressure cooker for us. Then she went off to enjoy her morning tea. Rossweis and I looked at each other. Neither of us moved for a long moment. The lamplight in the cellar was very low. The air smelled of dust and old wine. We could hear cellar moss and the floorboards above us. Isabel's departing steps creaked over our heads. Rossweis was the first to break the silence. She let out a slow breath and sat on a crate. Her knees seemed to give way suddenly. She stated flatly that her sister was a menace. I sat on the crate opposite her. We waited in silence. 1 hour is a long time in a locked cellar. We had been circling each other for weeks. We did not speak for most of that hour. Eventually, we spoke about small things. She asked if Noah was ready for the interview. I replied that Noah was nearly ready. She asked if the potion on the balcony had caused pain. I told her it did not hurt much. After a longer silence, she asked about the storm. She wanted to know if I meant what I said. I confirmed that I had meant it. She looked down at the floor. The mark on both of us remained warm. Neither of us spoke about the feeling. Finally, Isabel came back down the stairs while whistling. She slid the bolt back with intentional slowness. We were both sitting exactly as we had been. We sat 3 feet apart with our hands folded. We looked like children who were behaving perfectly. Isabel looked deeply disappointed by the scene. I remembered that hour clearly. Rossweis walked past her sister without saying a word. She went up the stairs. The mark on my chest cooled slowly over 10 minutes. I understood that a small door had opened between us. Neither of us was ready to walk through it yet. Isabel was not finished with her games. She waited 2 days and then struck again. This time the trap was in a garden pavilion. She was less patient with the dignity of her sister. She herded us into the pavilion for tea. She sat us on opposite ends of a bench. Then she produced a small crystal from her sleeve. She pressed it before Rossweis could object. The crystal played a recording of a child's voice. The voice was high and very earnest. It listed several important traits. The child wanted a husband who was tall with dark hair. He should be clever enough to argue. The husband should be strong enough to fight beside her. He must be kind enough that her mother likes him. He should be a scholar and a swordsman. A man who only knows one thing is boring. He must have hands for books and children. Rossweis turned very white. Isabel grinned at her sister with pure cruelty. She found the recording in a chest belonging to their mother. The recording was made when Rossweis was 9 years old. Every item on the list described me perfectly. I sat very still on the bench. The mark on my chest felt hot. The mark on the back of Rossweis must have been an inferno. She stood up in one motion and walked out. She did not come to dinner that night. Isabel watched her leave and rested her chin on her hand. She said quietly that her sister had wanted such a man. Rossweis had felt this way since she was a girl. She had never let anyone see this desire. Isabel told me never to mention this to Rossweis. I nodded in agreement. I did not tell Rossweis about the conversation. However, I now understood the woman who had branded me. She was not just any woman claiming a hero. She had claimed the exact hero from her private list. The universe had a sense of humor about these events. I also found the situation humorous. The next night, Isabel tried a third trap. This one was even worse than the others. She had a waterbed moved into a small room. She told both of us that the other wanted to talk. She locked the door behind us using a bribed servant. The trap was so blunt that it was almost artistic. Rossweis stood in the middle of the room. She kept her arms folded and avoided my eyes. She said if I touched her it must be my choice. It should not be because her sister decided for us. I told her the same thing from my perspective. We stood there for a while, then we both sat on the waterbed together. Standing was foolish, so we chose to sit. The waterbed sloshed under our weight. Rossweis snorted at the ridiculous situation. This was the first time I heard her make that sound. I began to laugh, and then she laughed too. The laughter surprised her more than me. We ended up lying on our backs on the mattress. Our shoulders were almost touching. We stared up at a ceiling painted with clouds. The artist had more enthusiasm than skill. We did not speak for a while. Eventually, she told me she had not wanted this situation. She meant the entire shape of our lives. This included the capture and the curse. It included children born within 1 year. She had not planned for a husband in her house. None of this was part of the plan for her reign. She admitted that she had improvised badly. She was very aware of her mistakes. I told her I had not wanted it either. She turned her head on the mattress and looked at me. She said quietly that the girls were the one thing she loved. She would not undo their existence. I told her that I felt the same way. Her hand was close to mine on the mattress. I did not know who moved first. Our fingers found each other in the dark. She did not lace her fingers with mine. She only pressed her palm against my own. The mark on my chest was a low warmth. This was not the flare of the pavilion. I understood in that quiet moment that this was not desire. It was also not spite. This was a truce and a new beginning. It was the first honest moment since the dungeon. Suddenly something skittered along the wall. Both of our heads turned toward the sound. A wooden toy spider was creeping across the floor. It was wound on a spring. Isabel was laughing herself sick on the other side. Rossweis sat up so fast the waterbed sloshed again. I sat up while laughing. The honest moment was gone. However, her hand had been in mine. Her mark had spoken plainly to me. I had felt what was under the armor of the queen. It was one honest breath between us. She said dryly that she would strangle her sister. She planned to do it in her sleep. I told her I would help with the task. We both got up. She unlocked the door with a key she already had. She had been carrying it the whole time. Isabel was not in the corridor. Isabel had wisely gone to bed. Isabel left the next day as suddenly as she arrived. She kissed the girls and hugged her sister. She winked at me over the shoulder of Rossweis. Then she climbed into her carriage. She expected an invitation to a christening soon. She mentioned a third child within the year. Rossweis threw a boot at the retreating carriage. The boot hit the roof of the vehicle. The laugh of Isabel floated back to us. The house went quiet after her departure. Rossweis and I did not speak of the traps. We did not mention the cellar or the pavilion. We resumed our daily routines. She held her council meetings. I taught Noah his lessons. Mune drew pictures as she usually did. The mark on my chest remained quiet most of the time. Rossweis was no longer suppressing the feeling. For the first time, she was not fighting it. I did not press her for more. I knew that there was plenty of time. However, I decided to retaliate against Isabel by proxy. Isabel had left a recording crystal behind in her hurry. I found the crystal under a chair. I played the recording in private. I heard a much younger Rossweis singing a bath song. She sang off-key about a fish. She had named the fish after her tutor. It was the most embarrassing 30 seconds of audio. Isabel had left it on purpose as a gift. It could also be a bomb depending on my usage. I chose to use it badly. I mentioned the fish casually at breakfast a week later. The spoon held by Rossweis froze in the air. Her eyes went to me and then to the shelf. I had foolishly left the crystal in plain sight. I had done this in a moment of pride. She recognized the crystal immediately. She knew what it contained. Her sister had threatened her with that recording for 80 years. She set her spoon down. She spoke in the calmest voice she had ever used. She said we were going to have a conversation later. She promised the conversation would be educational. Mune sensed the changing weather and ate faster. The conversation finally happened at midnight. Rossweis walked into my room wearing reading glasses. I did not know she owned those glasses. She was carrying a large stack of books. She noted that I had become cocky lately. She decided to remind me who was the teacher. She said we were going to have a lesson. The lesson would run until I passed her examination. The material included 3 volumes of Silver Clan Protocol. I had to drill the material orally. I stood at attention in the middle of my bedroom. My legs shook and my eyes watered. I had to recite the correct forms of address. There were 17 grades of Silver Court Noble. I had to recite them in order. I could not stumble during the recitation. She examined me until the sun rose. She refused to let me sit down. When I stumbled, she started the volume over. By sunrise, I could recite the protocol backwards. She finally closed the books. She stood in front of me with her arms folded. Her reading glasses were low on her nose. She said without smiling that she enjoyed the session. She looked forward to my next mistake. Then she walked out of the room. I fell face down on the bed. I slept for 6 hours. Round 2 had gone to her cleanly. The next weeks were the exam. Noah took the written test at St. Heath on a bright and cold morning. She wore a small and formal robe her mother had commissioned. The robe was silver-trimmed and severe. She carried her own pen in a small case she had chosen herself. Noah did not want anyone to walk her into the building. Rossweis walked her to the door of the examination hall and let her go alone. Noah did not look back as she entered. I stood behind Rossweis during this moment. I finally understood why my mother-in-law had picked this school. The exam lasted 6 hours. Mune and I waited together in the courtyard. She sat on my knee and drew pictures on my sleeve. She used a stick of chalk she had smuggled in. Rossweis paced the area. Her pacing looked like standing still to anyone who did not know her. To me, the movement was clear pacing. I did not make a comment about it. Noah eventually came out of the hall looking pale and tired. She did not tell us how the test had gone. She only asked, in her small and even voice, if she could have soup. She received her soup. 2 days later, the interview was held. This was the harder half of the process. 3 examiners from 3 different clans sat at a small round table. Noah sat in the middle of them. The examiners asked questions designed to make small dragons cry. The tutor had told Noah that the interview was about the family as well. They wanted to see how the parents held themselves. A tense mother or a resentful father would be noted. A couple who could not stand each other would cause problems. All of these details would be logged. Noah's final score would suffer because of it. Therefore, Rossweis and I had to look like a functioning couple. We rehearsed our interactions for a week. We agreed on small touches to show connection. She would sit close enough that our shoulders almost touched. I would rest my hand on the back of her chair. She would look at me when she answered questions about our home. I would smile at her when she spoke about the girls. The mark on my chest was warmed by this practiced closeness. This made the exercise easier to fake than we wanted to admit. The interview finally arrived. Noah did well on her questions. She stumbled once on the definition of a lesser applied magic principle. I saw her small hands clench in her lap. I answered the follow-up question that the examiner threw at me. I wove her previous answer into a fuller explanation. This made her stumble sound like modesty. She looked up at me briefly with her silver eyes. Something in her eyes shifted in that moment. The examiners then asked me about my background. I gave a version of my life that did not include the word hero. I described myself as a scholar from the border regions. I explained that I had traveled widely. I named enough obscure academic works to convince the panel. Rossweis let a small and proud look land on me. The examiners logged this interaction. We passed the interview. 2 weeks later, the official letter arrived. Noah had been accepted to St. Heath. She examined the letter in the front hall with us. Her back was very straight as she reviewed the news. Her chin trembled once, but she did not cry. She turned around and walked over to where I stood. Without saying a word, she hugged me around the waist. It was the first time she had touched me on purpose. I put my hand on the back of her head. I told her very quietly that I was proud of her. She held on a second longer and then let go. She walked past her mother and up the stairs to her room. She went to work on her next lesson because that was her nature. Rossweis stood in the hall with the letter in her hand. She looked at me across the space. The mark on my chest was warm. She did not say anything to me. She only nodded once and went into her council room. Then she closed the door. Noah gave a speech at the acceptance ceremony 1 week later. It was short and formal, and very much like her. In the middle of it, she looked over the families. She named the people who had helped her. She named her tutor, and then she named her mother. In the same even voice, she named her father. I was in the second row. I had not been expecting her to use that word. She stepped down from the stage after her speech. She walked in front of 200 people from 4 clans. She came straight to me and I bent down. I kissed her forehead. Her small hand touched my cheek exactly once. Then her hand dropped away. She went back to her seat. The 200 people from the 4 clans looked away. They all pretended they had not seen the queen blink hard. The queen of the Silver clan was clearly moved. The mark on my chest was warm the whole way home. Then the incident with Laurel happened. Laurel was the son of the Duke of the Crimson Dragon clan. He was 6 years old and big for his age. His father had raised him with specific beliefs. He believed the Crimsons were the finest of the 4 clans. He thought everyone else existed to be reminded of this fact. He was in the same class as Noah at St. Heath. Within the first week, he decided she was an insult. He disliked a silver princess with a human father. He answered this perceived insult during recess. He pushed Noah into a wall. Noah did not tell us about the incident. Mune told us the news instead. Mune had heard it from a servant. The servant had heard it from a nurse. The nurse had seen the bruise on Noah's shoulder. This happened when Noah changed for a lesson. Rossweis went perfectly still when she heard the news. I told her that I would handle the situation. She said quietly that she would like to eat the boy. I told her I would handle it peacefully. I wanted to avoid starting a war. 2 days later, the Duke himself arrived at our door. He arrived with an entourage of 12 people. He carried a red banner and a rehearsed expression. In the entry hall, he demanded to speak with the Queen. He said his son had reported an incident. He claimed Noah had struck his son without cause. The Duke demanded her expulsion from St. Heath. He wanted a formal apology from the Silver Clan. He also demanded a payment of restitution to his family. Rossweis stood on the stair and did not move. Her hands opened and closed once at her sides. I stepped forward before she could speak. I introduced myself politely as the father of Noah. I told him I had heard the account of the event. I told him I had a different account to present. The Duke looked at me with great confusion. He acted as if a piece of the wall had spoken. He saw a thin human man in a plain shirt. I had no rank pin and no weapon. I also had no tail. In Crimson etiquette, hiding a tail is a significant act. It is either a mark of deference or an insult. To the Duke, a human with no tail was ridiculous. He laughed at me. He asked what a tailless commoner could contribute to the talk. I told him I could contribute a duel. The entry hall went completely quiet. A formal challenge between a noble and commoner was legal. In Crimson custom, this was a rare event. Commoners usually knew better than to challenge nobles. If the commoner won, the matter was closed. The commoner's honor would then be recognized. If the noble won, he could name any restitution he wished. The Duke's face broke into a wide and cruel grin. He accepted the challenge before Rossweis could stop me. We went out to the courtyard. The Duke shed his coat and rolled his shoulders. He was a big man with a broad chest. He had very thick arms. He unfurled a short red-scaled tail behind him. This was a display move meant to intimidate me. He drew a short ceremonial sword from his back. He told me he would use the flat of the blade. He did not intend to kill his hostess's husband. He only wanted to break me a little. I did not draw a weapon. I did not have anything to draw. I told him I would fight without a weapon. His grin got even wider. He came at me across the courtyard. His first swing was fast for a big man. However, the move was telegraphed to me. I had spent 15 years reading Dragon Swordsman. I stepped inside the arc of his blade. I caught his wrist with my left hand. I took his elbow with my right hand. I dropped my weight through his shoulder. The joint popped and his arm gave out. The sword hit the flagstones with a clang. The Duke gasped in surprise. I did not let go of him. I turned his own falling weight against him. I drove my knee into the side of his kneecap. I heard the small, clean crack of the joint. The joint was going the wrong way. He went down onto that knee with a loud noise. A man of his size should not have made it. I stepped around him. I put my palm flat against the base of his skull. I pushed once. He went face down on the flagstones. The Duke did not get up. The whole exchange had taken 3 seconds. I had not used any magic. I had not even breathed hard. Under my shirt, my heart was racing. The coma had left me thinner than before. 3 seconds of that work had cost me a lot. But the courtyard did not see the cost. They saw a small human standing over the unconscious Duke. The Duke's own sword lay between us, untouched. His entourage did not move for a full breath. Then they moved very fast. 2 of them ran to their lord. 4 of them looked at me and stepped back. 1 young officer bowed low to me. I told them politely that the matter was closed. I told them the terms of the duel were met. I said their Duke would need a surgeon soon. I recommended a surgeon on the north side. I told them the prices were fair. I told them to give the Duke my regards. I said his son was welcome to try Noah again. He could receive a similar demonstration for himself. They carried their Duke out on their shoulders. The gate closed behind them. The courtyard was quiet once again. My daughters were watching the scene from the balcony. Moone was clapping her hands. Noah was not clapping. Noah was staring at me with wide silver eyes. Something in her face had rearranged itself. Rossweis stood on the stair where she had been. She came down the stairs slowly. She stopped in front of me. The mark on my chest was warm. It felt hot under her steady regard. She reached up and put her hand against my cheek. She looked at me as if seeing me for the first time. She said quietly that she had forgotten my nature. I told her I had been counting on that. Her mouth twitched, but she did not smile. Her hand dropped away. She walked toward the gate to give orders. She needed to handle the crimson response. The mark on my chest stayed warm for a long time. Noah came down the stairs and stopped in front of me. She did not hug me this time. She held out her small hand. I shook her hand. She formally said she had misjudged my rank. She said she would like to train with me. She wanted to do what I had just done. I told her I would teach her. She nodded once and went inside to write. I suspect she wrote a detailed account in her notebook. Moone ran down the stairs next. She launched herself off the last 3 steps. She hit me in the chest very hard. I almost went down from the impact. She wrapped her arms around my neck. She said loudly that she wanted to be like her father. I held her and looked over her shoulder. I saw the closing gate and the quiet courtyard. I watched Rossweis give her orders. Something in my chest finally let go. I was not free yet. I was still branded and a captive. My old empire still thought I was dead. My master and his wife had vanished without a trace. This was a mystery I had not yet solved. A Crimson Duke was on his way to a surgeon. When he woke up, he would want blood. I had 2 daughters. One of them called me daddy without thinking. The other one had just asked me to teach her how to fight. Their mother had branded me on a whim of pride. Later, she put her hand on my cheek in the courtyard. She looked at me as if I were a man instead of a trophy. My plan for slow revenge was quietly dying. A different plan was taking its place. I did not fight this new plan very hard. The sports day was announced 2 weeks after the duel. St. Heath called it the Family Games. The entire day took place at the academy grounds. Every family in the class was expected to compete. The events included foot races and magic drills. Finally, a 3-person relay crossed the great field. Each family member ran 1 leg of the race. The scores went into the public ledger of the academy. Clans watched these results closely. Rivalries often started on that field. These conflicts began before the children were old enough for weapons. Noah brought the letter to me at breakfast. She put the paper beside my plate without a word. Moon examined the letter while holding it upside down. She shrieked when she saw the word race. She wanted to be on the team. Moon was only 2 years old. Therefore, she was not eligible to compete. This news broke her heart for only 1 breath. Then she declared herself the official cheerleader and demanded a flag to wave. Rossweis examined the letter and looked at me over her cup. She said dryly that the Crimson Clan would be there. The Duke would not compete because his knee was in a brace. However, his son Laurel was in the class. Laurel's father would be watching the race. Every clan that saw the Duke carried away would also be there. I told my wife that I understood. Rossweis noted that a family who lost badly would look weak. People would think our previous duel was just a fluke. I told her we would not lose. Training started that afternoon. Rossweis took the first leg of the race. Speed on the ground was her strongest skill in human form. Her human body carried more weight than it appeared. She could accelerate at a rate that broke the ankles of her opponents. Noah took the middle leg. She would run against classmates her own age. Noah had the shortest legs on our team. She also had the least experience. Therefore, she was the target for the Crimson Clan. I took the final anchor leg. We drilled every evening after the lessons for Noah. Rossweis and I plotted our handoffs. Noah ran her sprints on the courtyard flagstones. She was small and serious during every practice. Her cheeks turned red, and her hair stuck to her forehead. Moon ran along the edges shouting encouragement. Most of her cheers involved the words fast and daddy. Noah stumbled on her 3rd day of drills. She fell hard on the flagstones and her palms were scraped. However, she did not cry. She sat up and looked at her hands. Her small face went very still. I knew she was about to give up on herself. I sat down on the flagstones beside her. I told her about my own master. When I was her age, I ran 1 mile every day. I had to carry a bucket of water in each hand. I spilled those buckets most days. Eventually, I brought them home full. Then my master made me start over with heavier buckets. Noah looked at me sideways. She asked if my master was a cruel man. I told her he was fair. I explained that it would be cruel to let me stop. She thought about that for a moment. Noah stood up and wiped her hands on her tunic. She started her sprint over from the beginning. Rossweis watched us from the balcony above. My wife folded her arms on the rail with her hair unpinned. When Noah finished the sprint, Rossweis had a small softening at her mouth. She pretended this did not happen. The mark on my chest felt warm through the drill. I could not sleep the night before the games. I sat at my alchemy bench and looked at my hands. They were steadier than they had been in months. The weight from my coma was mostly gone. My reflexes were slowly coming back. I could not yet match the man from my prime. That man was at the top of his career. He drilled every day and ate the best food. He was always armed. Now I was a father of small children in a foreign house. I had traded a sword for a kitchen stove. However, I could still win a relay against dragons if necessary. I had not planned an escape yet. I thought about escaping in the first weeks. Now the thought did not fit my heart anymore. My old empire had declared me dead. My master had vanished. If I took my daughters, I would run toward a dangerous country. That land would make Mune a symbol and Noah a soldier. I did not know a single safe corner to hide them. Rossweis was not a safe corner either, but she was a place where they were loved. The plan for escape stayed in a drawer in my mind. It did not come out that night. Instead, I brewed a small stamina tonic. The tonic was mild. Rossweis saw the burner going, but she did not comment. I drank half of the liquid and saved the rest for morning. She stood in the doorway for a moment. Her eyes went to the burner and the flask. Then she said she would see me on the field. She left the room. The mark on my chest stayed warm for a long time. The morning of the games was blue and dry. The field of St. Heath is a bowl of green grass. It is set into the low hills outside the capital. Clans had raised their pavilions around the bowl. The Silver Clan sat in the center by tradition. The Red Clan was to our left. The Electric Clan sat to our right in a gray tent. The Crimson Clan was at the far end. Red banners snapped in the wind there. I saw the Duke sitting under his awning. The Duke had his leg propped on a footstool. His face looked like a storm about to break. Rossweis wore her formal silver robes. She looked like a queen and moved like an athlete. Noah wore her academy uniform. Mune wore a small silver dress and carried a flag. The flag featured a sword, a dragon, and a fish. The morning events ran cleanly. Noah placed well in her magic drills. She did not win, but she did not stumble. The examiners logged her results carefully. Rossweis competed in the magic demonstration for parents. She did not use all of her power. A silver queen at half strength is still terrifying. The Crimson Duke did not applaud from his seat. His son Laurel glared across the field at Noah. I did not compete in the morning. I watched the other clans instead. I watched the Electric Dragon delegation. Their king, Thor, was a broad man in his 40s. He wore a quiet storm like a coat. Thor sat at the front of his pavilion. He did not speak much. His eyes found mine across the field and he studied me. He did not smile or scowl. He filed the information away and looked away. Thor was the president of the arbitration committee. Any dispute would go to him. I remembered this piece of information. The relay was the last event of the day. There were 3 runners per team. The first leg was a straight sprint across the field. This was 100 paces on flat grass. The second leg was a longer stretch around a bend. The third leg was a full loop back to the start. No magic or transformations were allowed. Rossweis stretched at the line. Noah stood behind her at the handoff mark. I stood at the far end of the loop. I looked back at my family. Mune was on the sideline with her flag. She had lost her voice from cheering. She did not care. The starter raised his flag. The Silver Clan faced a Red Clan mother and a Crimson mother. The Electric Clan chose a lean father. The flag dropped. Rossweis was 3 paces ahead almost immediately. Her acceleration on flat ground was incredible. She reached the handoff mark very quickly. She slapped the silver baton into the palm of Noah. Then she stepped aside. Noah ran. She was the smallest child on her leg. Her opponents were older children. Noah started with a very large lead. Her only job was to protect that lead. She protected most of it. At the bend, a Crimson boy cut the corner illegally. He stepped on the inside of Noah's ankle. She went down onto her hands and knee. The Crimson side made a sound like a cheer. The officials at the bend hesitated. They saw the foul but did not raise a flag. Noah did not cry. She was up in a heartbeat. She favored her ankle but kept the baton in her fist. She ran the rest of the leg with a limp. The Crimson boy passed her. The Red child passed her too. Noah handed the baton to me in third place. She had tears in her eyes but refused to let them fall. She looked up at me. She whispered that she was sorry to her father. The word daddy landed on my chest like a brand. The whole day narrowed down to her small face. My older daughter had called me daddy. I told her she had done her job. I told her I would do mine. Then I ran. The Crimson Father was in first place. He was tall and strong. He had a lead of 30 paces on me. The Electric Father was between us. I was 30 paces back. I was a former dragon slayer coming out of a coma. I had half a tonic in my veins. I had the word of my daughter in my chest. I did not think about the odds. I just ran. I made up no ground during the first 50 paces. My legs held together but did not move faster. The Electric Father passed the Crimson Father. I moved to the outside on the long straight. The Electric Father looked over in surprise. He was not slow. He held his position for another 100 paces. Then he gave a small nod and let me pass. He had already secured second place from the Crimson Clan. He had nothing to gain by burning himself out. I remembered the courtesy and kept running. The Crimson Father was 30 paces ahead of me again by then. He had heard me coming and put on his own burst. He was a big man and he was going hard. The finish line was 200 paces away. Something under my ribs opened. It had been there since the courtyard duel. It had been there since Noah had asked me to teach her. It was there when Moon climbed onto my chest and refused to let go. It remained since the moment Rossweis's hand touched my cheek. My daughter's father had just uncorked it. I ran the last 100 paces the way I had run at age 20. I closed the gap in 50 paces. The Crimson Father heard my footfalls closing in faster than expected. He jerked his head to look. His stride broke by half a step. That was all I needed. I came up on his shoulder 90 paces from the line. At 70 paces, I was even with him. At 50 paces, I was past him. He tried something. His outside foot kicked wide as I passed. It caught a divot in the grass, and a small clod of turf flew up. Some of it hit my thigh. Some of it hit the ground behind me. This was a dirty trick used by a losing runner to plant a story. I saw it happen and I kept running. I crossed the finish line 5 paces ahead. The silver pavilion made a noise I had not heard from silver dragons before. A moment later I understood they were cheering. Silver dragons did not cheer often. They used the same tone as their hunting cries. This sound carried across the whole bowl. Rossweis stood at the front with her circlet slightly crooked. Mune sat on someone's shoulders. She waved her flag with both hands while the fish design flapped. Noah stood at the second leg handoff mark. She had put both her small hands over her face. I stood at the finish line with my hands on my knees. I was breathing hard. I laughed because I did not know what else to do. The Crimson Father crossed the line 2 heartbeats later. His chest was heaving and his face was dark. He did not look at me. He walked straight to the official's tent. There he started talking loudly to the closest steward. He pointed back at the finish line. He pointed at me. Finally, he pointed at the ground where he had kicked up the divot. I stopped laughing. I straightened. I walked toward the official's tent. Rossweis was already coming down from the pavilion to meet me. Her face had gone perfectly cold again. This happened whenever she was preparing to open something. The Crimson Father was creating a story. He told the stewards that I had cheated. He claimed I kicked dirt up on the final straight to break his footing. This was an old and illegal trick from human sprint racing. The St. Heath Academy had banned it for 2 generations. He claimed the divot on the track was his evidence. He said his sister-in-law and cousin had both witnessed the act. They were sitting in the front row of the Crimson Pavilion. He demanded the Silver family's victory be voided and the race rerun. Rossweis stopped in front of him. She did not raise her voice. She only stood there. The temperature around her dropped significantly. The mark on my chest grew very hot. The head steward was a small dragon man with a clipboard. He looked like a man who did not want to be there. He held up both hands. He said this dispute was above his level. Any protested finish went to arbitration. The steward said the president of the arbitration committee had been called. The bowl went quiet. At the electric pavilion, Thor rose from his chair. He did not hurry. In my experience, electric dragons did not hurry. He came down the steps of his pavilion at a slow and steady pace. His 2 attendants fell in behind him. The crowd on the field parted for him without being asked. The air near him had a faint metallic taste. It was like the taste lightning leaves on the tongue. He crossed the field. He stopped at the official's tent. He looked at the Crimson Father. He looked at me. He looked at the divot on the track. He looked back at me. This time his gaze lingered longer. Thor asked whose family had lodged the protest. His low and quiet voice carried well. The Crimson Father said his family had done so. Thor asked if the Crimson family understood the arbitration ruling was final. The ruling would be entered into the Academy's public ledger for all 4 clans. The Crimson Father was coached poorly by his own pride. He said yes. Thor turned his head. He looked at me for a 3rd time. His face gave nothing away. Then he looked at Rossweis. He looked at Noah. She had come up to stand behind her mother with wide silver eyes. Finally he looked at Moon. Moon sat on a servant's shoulders. She stared at the tall electric king. She held her flag straight up like a small spear. Thor's mouth did something that was almost a smile. He said quietly that he would hear both sides. He announced that the arbitration would begin now. He turned and walked back toward the official's tent. The stewards scrambled to prepare the area. Both families were called to follow. The Crimson Father went first and continued talking. Rossweis and I followed. Noah reached up and took my hand wordlessly as we walked. Her small fingers were cold. At the door of the tent, I looked back once. Moon sat on the servant's shoulders in the middle of the field. She watched me go. Her flag was still raised. The Duke had struggled up from his footstool at the Crimson Pavilion. He stood on his good leg. He gripped the rail of his awning so hard the wood creaked. His eyes were fixed on the door of the official's tent. He was smiling in a way I did not like at all. Whatever had just started here was not about a divot on a track. I stepped into the tent.